Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? We are back live and direct, folks. Welcome to MMA Reloaded on the mic, episode 25, with your boy right here, man. It is time once again, folks, to go on the mic with another great standout in mixed martial arts. And I'm gonna be exploring the UK MMA scene. Um Folks, and please, John, what's going on? We are back live and direct, folks. Welcome to MMA Reloaded on the mic. We are back live for episode 25 of MMA Reloaded on the mic. And welcome. You know what time it is? It's your boy right here, man. MMA Reloaded himself. So, folks, today I'll be, as I said, exploring the great standouts in UK MMA. And I'll be going for a guy who will be fighting for the Cage Warriors Middleweight Championship next week, 24th of June, folks. Uh, 2021. He is a Matt the Beast Bonner, and Matt Bonner is coming in as a challenger, folks, a 16-fight veteran against the champion 9-2 Matthias Frederick. Now, folks, this is a great fight, and if you're not familiar with Matt Bonner, he should be. He's a very well-respected competitor in the UK MMA scene. And knowing both of their styles, it is a great fight for British MMA fans, even for mixed martial arts fans, man. It's going to be on UFC Fight Pass as Cage Warriors is, folks. Folks, we are not going to waste any time. We are just going to go straight in and do the particulars, and then I will be back to talk to you guys, the fans, as I always do. So, ladies and gentlemen, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. And we are back after today. We got to do the particulars. You know what I mean, to initiate and welcome and inaugurate our new guest, folks. And this interview, this episode of On the Mic, episode 25. So, folks, today is Matt the Beast Bonner, and Matt Bonner, folks, is a British MMA veteran. He's a coach. He trains with some of the best standouts in mixed martial arts, and himself making his name in at Cage Warriors, which is the pinnacle of British MMA, of UK MMA. Sorry, we can't just generalize it to the British. We can generalize it to the whole United Kingdom. And folks, Matt Bonner is ready, and so am I, man. Let's do this. Hey, Matt.
How you doing, mate? Okay. Can you hear
Yeah, how
me?
are you, mate? Yeah, how you getting on, mate? You good?
I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well. So Matt, first of all, of course, I have to say it's great to have you on the show. I've got a lot of friends in the podcasting world that have sat with you and interviewed you, mate. So I thought I might as well get one into. Heard a lot of good things about you. Uh, and of course, you got probably the biggest fight of your professional career coming up next week. Cage Warriors 123. Um, First of all, mate, before we get into talking about the title fight, how did it all start for Matt the Beast Bonner in MMA and combat sports?
I started Thai boxing when I was 10 years old. So me and my twin brother, I got a twin brother who's a Thai boxer. He's a professional Thai boxer now.
Yeah.
We kind of stopped footy training when we was 10 and we was looking for something else to do. We kind of lived in, I guess, maybe a little bit of a rough area as well. So
Yeah.
my mum said, she might have seen like an ad in a newspaper and said, do you fancy having to go at Thai boxing? And that's where we went, and we was Thai boxing for about 5 or 6 years, and then we eventually moved on to MMA. I cracked on with MMA, and Dan went back to Thai boxing. He's like ninth in the world at his weight class now, so he's very high level. Yeah, but I'm kind of obviously very comfortable with MMA, and that was really our kind of bridge into combat sports.
I guess that's a great way to start off with, man, with your family because they that's your real support group right there, and how does that feel to you knowing that you and your brother are taking the same path and sort of growing in combat sports together?
We've always been kind of very supportive of each other. There's never been that kind of nasty competitive conflict between the two of us. It's always been very much he wants me to do well and me vice versa. And we've kind of both had our ups and downs with combat sports, but it is, I think Dan would agree, pretty much the most important things in our lives. It's the direction I think we're always gonna head towards, whether that's going to be fighting or coaching martial arts when we finish with our professional fighting careers. But it's obviously having such a high level Thai boxer around me is really kind of important to my training, handy to have around. But again, it's also having that someone who you can confide in if you're having trouble with diets or you're training or you got an injury, and it's worked out really well. Like I mentioned, we're very supportive of each other, and we really do want to see each other do really well.
I'm glad to hear it, mate. And of course, being having your brother there with you, and of course taking your own path as well. That's what it's really all about. And
Yeah.
heading into this championship fight, of course, you're a week out now, and I want to thank you for taking the time once again to come on the show.
No problem.
Um, so for training camp, Matt, coming into this fight, because it's a championship fight, did you do anything different coming into this training camp, or was it pretty much as you would do normally?
It kind of wasn't as drastic in terms of obviously the difference between a normal fight and a championship fight is the rounds. We do 5-5s in the championship fights. That's 5 5-minute rounds. So it was more the conditioning side, I suppose, which was changed. But even that wasn't as drastic as people may think. We're so fit anyway because I've fought so many times in such a short time. I was already super fit. I already knew for the James Webb fight, I could have gone 5 rounds with James. That was obviously a 3 round fight, but it was more so the conditioning. One thing that we did do is we kind of relaxed the strength training and did more conditioning work. It was about keeping the strength levels the same, but also kind of trying to build on the condition aspect. But even at Next Generation, in terms of the sparring rounds, we've always done 5 5-minute rounds, sparring rounds ever since I've been there, which was going on 2 years now. So it never felt like a massive change this camp. It was essentially cracking on with what we were already doing.
That's it. And do you feel that during championship rounds compared to having a normal day in the gym training for 3 rounders, Do you feel that carrying as much muscle on you as you would normally do sort of slows you down in those championship rounds if you don't really balance the cardio and conditioning out with it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is very much the balancing act, isn't it, in MMA? If you want to be strong, you want to be able to pick your opponent up and slam him on his head and keep him down, but then you need to do that over the course of 5 rounds as well. I tend to still think I'm probably size-wise in the middleweight division, still probably kind of middle. No, I'm not a huge middleweight. I'm not a small middleweight. I generally don't really want to do a big drastic weight cut anymore. That's kind of what's come into ever since I've gone to middleweight. That was the point of moving up from welter because I spent quite a long time at welterweight. So again, I think of it the kind of the middle ground where I'm still reasonably strong, still strong for middleweight, but I'm still super fit as well, and I don't carry much fat. I don't even generally carry huge slabs of muscle. Maybe like Frederick is, he's a bigger middleweight, so I do think that will play a part if this fight would go past the initial 3 rounds.
Mhm. Do you feel that moving up from welter to middle, and if we just touch on that for a minute, because at welterweight, how were you feeling? Did you feel the effects of weight cutting during the fights?
Yeah, you just cannot recover. I mean, I was doing kind of 15 kilo weight cuts, which is huge. I think that's like a 2.5 stone weight cut for anybody who doesn't kind of work out in kilograms like myself. That's an enormous cut. I mean, again, my twin, he would do the same. And it was, I mean, say we kind of play off a normal training camp is an 8-week camp generally. But that 8 weeks would be spent losing the weight when really you want that 8-week training camp to be simulating your opponent, learning, building your skill set. It shouldn't be an 8 weeks losing 15 kilo. And then, of course, all the water manipulation comes into that as well. And you're in saunas, you're in the salt baths, and it generally is a real miserable time. And then the next day, you can feel your kidneys and your spleen and your liver, they're still very swollen up. And again, I've kind of, ever since the Jamie Richardson fight, I've kind of looked at this as very much, I want to enjoy it. I'm going to be a professional. And I'm going to kind of do my best to win this belt, but I also want to enjoy the process as well. And you're absolutely not enjoying the process if you're miserable all the time because you're not eating properly and then you can't train properly and then you're not recovering or healing your injuries properly because of the limited amount of calories you're getting in.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole realm of combat sports, right? And even in this day and age, is that as so much emphasis has been put on weight cut and the fact that it is pretty much like 60-70% of your professionalism right there. And so I'm glad that you're at middleweight now. And how do you feel at middleweight? Do you feel a lot stronger? Do you feel a lot healthier when you cut weight now? Because of course you might not have that much weight to cut as opposed to Walter.
My weight cut is very easy now. I don't think I'll ever kind of sit in a salt bath again. I really don't think I'd ever sit in a sauna again. It generally I will run. I'll stick on like a sweatsuit or a sauna suit, and I'll generally run the weight off. And that I'll lose almost. I might. That might be over like a 3-day kind of process, and I'll lose probably about 3-4 kilo just wrapping up and running that off. And obviously there's water load in there as well. There is still some kind of water manipulation there, but it's nowhere near the extent that it was at welterweight. So the water cutting process is very much a lot easier. I'm eating a lot better, and I'm still going in and feeling really sharp and really strong. I've certainly, if you look at my last fight against James Webb probably came in at least 5 kilo heavier than me. But I didn't feel that extra weight. I didn't feel he was stronger than me in any capacity. It was reversed, and I think a lot of that comes with being a lot fresher and not having 8 weeks of weight cutting hell.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly, mate. So it's all about feeling healthier and feeling a lot more comfortable physically and mentally, right? And
sure.
Coming into this fight and coming into, of course, being a championship fight, and I've heard and I saw that it is your first championship shot as a professional. 16 fights in your career. But do you think the pressure of it being your first professional title fight sort of eases because you've held championships as an amateur as well?
Possibly. Again, my whole attitude on fighting in general kind of flipped after the Jamie Richardson fight. I fought Jamie Richardson and kind of had the worst performance of what I felt was the worst performance of my career. I remember coming out of that fight and saying, "Do you know what? I hated the whole thing." I remember texting my girlfriend after the fight and saying, hate the process. I don't want to do this anymore, and this, and this." And it was essentially because I was putting so much pressure on myself. And then after the fight, I fought against George Smith, and the whole kind of ethos of the camp from me was just to go in there and enjoy it, do your best, and again, don't stack all that pressure on your shoulders. I knew that if I fought James Webb, that I'd be offered the title shot. That had already kind of been confirmed, and the pressure of knowing that had no effect on the day of the fight or leading up to the fight. It just felt very much like another day in the office when I fought James Webb. I think possibly that comes down to maybe fighting so consistently and obviously having a good run of results. But I really don't feel like this pressure of being a world champion or this kind of bucket list, ticking off this bucket list thing of winning the Cage Warriors belt is really going to impact me on the day or again leading up to it. It is just another fight, and I generally do believe that I'm going to go in there and do my absolute best. And if I lose, I lose, and if I win, I'm a world champion. But I do feel like I'm going to be a world champion at some point. This isn't going to be the only kind of chance if this goes, the way I don't want it to go. If I lose, so I'll go in there very relaxed, and whatever happens, happens.
100%. 100%. I actually appreciate and I actually admire that sort of attitude, because the thing about it, even if you don't get your hand raised, and God forbid you actually do, but you do come out as a winner as well in some kind of way, because you're taking a lot away from the experience, right? At the end of the day.
I just feel. I mean, it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I feel very grateful to be able to do what I do now, especially with COVID and whatnot, kind of interfering with everybody else's lives and generally stopping people, doing what they want to do for a good year and a bit. Cage Warriors was pretty much the only organisation that carried on through all this, and we were lucky enough to be able to fight behind closed doors and stay in these hotels and all the COVID bubbles and all the rest of it. So that's the kind of the main thing, that the overarching kind of emotion for me. I'm just very grateful to be involved, and if I win, then great. That it's another step up the ladder. It's another step towards the UFC or where I want to go. But there isn't this kind of, like I say, this pressure that's going to weigh me down and make me not perform. If I don't perform, then it is what it is, and if I do, then great. I can again take another step on that ladder. But there is this kind of overall emotion of just being very grateful for having this opportunity and working towards my dreams, because again, there's not many people in the world who get to wake up every morning, do a job they really enjoy doing, and I'm one of them. So like I say, just very grateful to be able to do that.
Well, I was going to ask you about this like later on, but I think throughout you've just answered the question gradually, and I was just going to talk about mentality. And I think you've just answered my question straight away. And the thing is I've always said is that no matter what you do, you have to love what you do, and even if you're not doing what you love, at least work harder.
Sure.
And the thing is, Matt, is that you found a weight now that you're comfortable at. You've gained that experience, and I mean, for anybody familiar with yourself or with Cage Warriors, they'll know you've actually fought really big names, and 5-1 in your last 6 fights is no small feat. So congratulations. And do you feel that all chops down and your attitude right now and your mentality right now, do you think that chops down to the maturity that you've gained throughout this your professional career, and the activity you've had?
I think I hated losing, but I could always take something away from losing. Yeah. A lot of people look at my record and say, you've had a lot of losses, and they're right in saying that. I did make a lot of mistakes when I first kind of involved in the sport. I was very naive. I took all these fights against really, really tough guys. I didn't have a kind of a manager. I didn't even really have much of a coaching structure at that time. But I was, if I lost a fight, there would be that initial sulk and upset, and then there would be always back to the drawing board kind of attitude. I've seen really, really great fighters who have gone on 5-0, 6-0, and then they'll lose one fight and they'll completely disappear off the map, and you'll never see them again. So I think that's where kind of I've excelled in a way. I can take those losses and I can recover, and I can take big fights as well. Generally I've lost a lot of the fights because I've took maybe guys who are out my league at the time, but I've also got to the position I'm in because I've took the tough fights. Yeah. I mean, when I fought George Smith, which was at the start of this little winning streak I've got, I was an absolutely enormous underdog to that fight. And I kind of said to my coach at the time, I think George Smith is the best in this division. And he agreed as well. So, taking those risks sometimes can be, a bad idea. But if you've got everything in place, if you have got a good gym behind you, if you have got people looking out for you, then these big kind of dangerous fights can work to your advantage as well. I fought George Smith, who was on a 5-fight winning streak. Then I fought Matt Inman, who was, kind of a legend of the UK scene. And then obviously James Webb, who was this former champion. So I kind of almost cornered Cage Warriors, and they had to give me the title shot because there was nobody else they could have put me against. I'd kind of torn through the division at that point and fought these 3 guys that essentially most people thought I was going to lose against.
And how important was that for you mentally, and especially in general for a fighter? Yeah, Matt, whether you're coming off a loss, whether you're in between rounds, whether you're walking out to a fight during training camp, or even on a win streak like yourself, how important is it to stay mentally strong and to stay ready mentally to be able to face, even if you lose and end the win streak, or you win and then the losing streak, or vice versa? How important is it for a fighter to stay mentally strong and be able to get back on their feet?
It's very cliche, isn't it, when people say kind of fighting is 95% mental and things like that, but it's the truth when people do say that. And you can have this perfect training camp, this 8 weeks of smashing everyone in the gym and looking the part, but if you don't feel right on the day, if you let the nerves creep in, if you let your opponent's past fights kind of creep in again, I remember watching Jamie Richardson fight, and he'd knocked out 5 or 6 people out cold. He'd absolutely starched them. And I kind of went in that fight convinced that I was going to get knocked out. And then kind of in the 3rd round, when I'd felt his power, I thought, you know what, he can't knock me out. But obviously by that time, it was just too late. If you let those deep demons creep in, then again, that 8 weeks of training, that 8 weeks of being in physical shape means absolutely nothing. You have to go in there with a strong mental attitude. Otherwise, you're going to lose.
It's like defeating yourself in a way, right? And I guess if I rewind back just over 7 years now, or 4 years in the sport, and as a professional, and I go to your amateur career, how important, because I love touching on amateur careers with guys I talk to, because it's always great and humble to really go back to your roots. And so for your amateur career, and I looked at it and I saw you were very successful, even though you won championships and you gained that experience. How important is it? How important was your amateur career heading in and transitioning into your professionals? How important was it to have that experience as an amateur?
The amateur career is super important. I still think, looking back, that was probably where I actually made my biggest mistakes. I think I should have stayed at amateur a little bit longer. And this is coming from someone who fought quite a lot at amateur compared to the guys who are fighting today. I think I had kind of like 10 fights at amateur, which is a fair amount. But again, if we go back to the kind of the mindset, mental thing that we were just talking about before this question, that my mentality wasn't correct. I went pro because I felt, oh my God, I'm 26 and there's guys who are 18 in the UFC. I'm running out of time, I'm getting old. And that almost forced me into this kind of pro. I need to fight pro when I don't really think I was ready, mentally ready. And I certainly didn't have the team behind me that I needed to be successful at pro. And again, that was my fault. That's why I initially moved to Next Gen a little bit later on. But for any of the young guys who are coming up, I would say, don't rush into this pro career. Make all your mistakes at amateur. Become a complete kind of MMA fighter. Fight everybody from anywhere. Fight as often as you can, and just take your time. Especially if you're kind of late teens to mid 20s, you have still got a lot of time in the sport. And what we are seeing now is even the pro fighters. We've got guys who are over 40 in the UFC now, and I tend to think that's going to become more and more prolific in the UFC. We're seeing guys who are competing for longer because the nutrition's getting better and the training methodologies are getting better. Don't rush into this pro career. Fight as many times as you can at amateur, and then when you feel you're ready and your coaches say you're ready, that's when you can progress into the pros.
And I guess that's a great analogy, and it's a great example looking at fighters right now fight over 40, and we've seen guys like some of the greats who have fought over 40, like Dan Henderson, Michael Bisping. And I guess the thing is, as time's gone on, so has the nutrition, and so has how fighters really take care of their body. So in my opinion, I've always said that age is just a number in this sport, and nobody really generally understands where I'm actually come from. And if you look at some of the greats who have actually fought over 40 and won world championships, that's your prime example. I mean, you look at some of the great boxers, and you look at Mayweather. So even you're 30 years old right now. It's not old.
Sure. That's right. I kind of feel like I've at least at the minimum got a good 8 to 10 years left. I've not had any major injuries. I've been fortunate enough where I've not kind of had a blowout of the knee or a real bad back issue or anything like that. You've seen a lot more fighters coming out now, and they're talking about heavy sparring and training being detrimental and things. And I do think in maybe another 10 years, people will look back and look at these hard sparring sessions, and they're going to look very medieval. They're going to look like, what were these guys thinking going to war every day, with the 16-ounce boxing gloves. Everyone thinks 16-ounce boxing gloves is going to save the brain, and it's not. Or a head guard. Oh, I just got my head smashed around for 10 rounds, but I had a head guard on, so I'll be okay. And it's not the way. That's not to say you don't need harder spars. You absolutely do, but I think it's probably more prolific in boxing than it is MMA. But you do see a lot of MMA fighters who never get to fight. Think of someone like Cain Velasquez, who lost out millions and millions and millions of dollars because his knees were smashed up or his shoulders were torn or concussions or whatnot. I do think that will be the biggest thing that's going to extend people's careers, is not having those big wars in the gym.
And then when that veteran finally returns to fighting, like Cain Velasquez, and he was injury prone, his shoulder and his back. Sure. When he finally returned and he lost against Francis Ngannou, that was about it for him, And is that sort of a decision up to the fighter, Matt? And how they want to sort of take their camp or take their training sessions in the gym, even if they're not fighting.
I think it is. I think that's what I've kind of, especially this camp, kind of mentioned and said to the coach, like, I don't really want to be going and sparring really hard. I don't want these guys who are going to try and oblique kick my knee and stuff like that. And I think sparring is sparring, and it's combat sport, and accidents going to happen or things are going to happen. Sometimes you're going to get elbowed and kneed and all the rest of it. Again, it's a combat sport. The risk is still quite high, but I do absolutely think there's ways you can control that. And I think at the end of the day, as a fighter, you're the one who's getting in there and you're the taking the damage. It's your body. I definitely think there's a place for sensible conversations for your coach and just saying, I think that was probably a bit too hard. Then can you go and tell this guy to cool it down next time? Because I don't want to. The problem is sometimes, especially going against a bigger guy, they can make you gun shy. And what you can't do is take that into a fight. You can't go in worried about getting punched because you've been on your tiptoes for 8 weeks in the training camp. You need to go in there, confident and comfortable. And so, yeah, I do think if you can't sit down with your coach and say that, then you're probably at the wrong camp or at the wrong kind of gym. That's definitely, and you have to remember as well, a coach has got maybe 30 fighters on the mat to look out for. He generally might not be spending the whole session watching you, so he might not even know that any of the sparring is getting out of hand. So I do think a talk or a chat or a phone call to your coach can 99% of the time sort that out.
There's a funny example of that because I was watching the Ultimate Fighter 14 and Michael Bisping was coaching with Jason Miller and he was focused on a pair sparring and there was another pair behind him actually confronting each other because of something that had gone wrong, and then in the Ultimate Fighter #1, some guy broke his leg because the fighter who was sparring him pushed him back into another fighter who was throwing a kick at the time, and it hit him in the back of the knee. And so, yeah, I guess, man, I see where you're coming from and how, and I guess that's all to do with your gym, right? And
Sure.
the people you train with. How important is that to have a good gym environment where you can focus on training camps and heading into a fight and where you can feel comfortable in yourself to talk with your coach and build that rapport?
I think if people again looked at my record and saw this kind of current win streak, this has only come about because I moved to Next Gen. Yeah. Like I said, I've generally looked after me, and I kind of won't say in terms of Paul Rimmer is the main coach, but I've been there for 2 years, so it's not kind of like, for example, Paddy Pimlet's been there for 10 years, so I'm never going to have the personal relationship with Paul than Paddy has, because Paddy's been there since day one and he built Paddy from the ground up. So it's not like Paul Rimmer's ever going to be like a father figure to me or anything like that. But I think we have got the relationship where we can talk professionally about training camps and we can talk about game plans and stuff like that. We have got like a very comfortable relationship, and I would say that with the rest of the lads as well. Most of them are Scousers and they've known each other for 5, 6 to 10 years. And I'm from Warrington. Generally, Scousers and guys from Warrington don't really get on for the most part. But they made me feel very comfortable. There's absolutely no issues with anyone at the gym. There's usually at least one person you don't really get on with, but I can't really think of one where I've had any kind of argument or fuss with anyone. Everyone at Next Gen, everybody who's at the pro class in the morning wants to get to the UFC. Everybody has got that goal. There's no one there who wants to kind of, I might have a go at Cage Warriors and then I'll just stay on the domestic scene or anything like that. Everybody wants to get to the UFC. So there's very much kind of like a very hard-working mentality there. And you see that with the results they've had with, they've had 3 Cage Warriors world champions, and obviously Paddy's just gone to the UFC as well with, Chris Fishgold and Molly from Next Gen as well. So you can see that the results speak for themselves. But in terms of how my relationship with the gym, I'd like to think it's very good, and I'd like to think that they think I'm, going to be a permanent member of the team.
And you are, to be honest. I mean, it's a great asset to have veterans in the gym, and to have fellow standouts in the gym, because, to be honest, comparing the names that you mentioned, like Paddy Pim and Chris Fishgold and Molly McCann, it's you're in the same boat, yeah. And you're not, and to be honest, having people that are in the same boat training with you is a benefit to
sure
to building yourself up as well, right? And I guess how important is it, and what does it mean to you, Matt, to train with names like that, and sort of they can take things from you, and you can take things from them in return.
Sure.
With trade.
I think I have more to do with kind of Paddy than I would do with Molly for obvious reasons. That Molly's a lot lighter and she'll spar the bantamweights and throw weights to the gym, where Paddy is kind of like I will spar and wrestle and grapple with Paddy quite often, obviously amongst the other guys there. So it's you never get the impression, especially again from Paddy, because I spend more time with him, that he thinks he's better than anyone, that he thinks he knows everything, or that he's already made it. I think he's got a hell of a drive to make it to the UFC, and he will do very well in the UFC. He will. But it's very helpful to have this. There's a clear pathway, from Paddy and Molly and from the rest. If you win the Cage Warriors title, there's a pathway to the UFC, and that's a path that's well worn now. There's probably over 100 Cage Warriors fighters which have transcended to the UFC. So that's very helpful, and I think that shows kind of the quality of the Cage Warriors world title as well. If you win that world title, you are one of the best fighters in Europe at your weight class. And then if you're kind of mixing it up with the guys in the gym or UFC fighters as well and doing reasonably well, again, that reaffirms that you're in the right gym and you're doing the right things, and you're going to go to the right place as a result of that.
That's it. And Cage Warriors is that pinnacle in UK MMA and European MMA. I mean, like you said, countless champions from Cage Warriors have gone into the UFC. Yeah. Conor McGregor and Paddy Pimblett, two of the most notable. Chris Fishgold. It's one of those things that I guess for us here in the UK, we need a platform too, right, man? I mean, to transition into the UFC or bigger stages, because in the States you got so many independent promotions that are heavily looked at by the UFC and are heavily broadcasted on UFC Fight Pass. That makes it easier for the UFC to sort of scout. Mm-hmm. So for yourself, having that opportunity to fight and broadcast on UFC Fight Pass, what does that mean to you? That opportunity to know that this guy might be watching, or he might be watching, or he might be watching.
It's satisfying. After the last fight against James Webb, I think they said that you're on the UFC's radar now. Basically, that's essentially what they said. You're on the radar. So straight away you think, oh Christ, I'm really quite close to making it to the UFC. If I can win that title and maybe you defend it or whatever, you get in there. I say that's the power of Cage Warriors. Cage Warriors and Graham Boylan, the president of Cage Warriors, has got a very strong relationship with the UFC. And so it just makes the path so much easier. I think Cage Warriors would be the predominant organisation in Europe. And like we've mentioned, you've had an awful lot of fighters go over to the UFC. So again, it's the pathway. The pathway's very clear. If you're in the Cage Warriors and you're winning fights and you're working towards a title, or you get the title, there's a good chance that you are going to attract the attention of the UFC.
I mean, it's the prestige, right? And I guess it's the respect as well for the UFC to actually notice these things, and you have Bellator as well, where they have picked up British standouts and UK standouts. There was Ross Houston from Scotland who went there too, and to Bellator. And I guess, Matt, the possibilities are endless, right? You never know, and I guess it's just all about the opportunity coming in. And so just to close off, Matt, would you who were some of your inspirations coming into this sport? And of course, you train with your brother, your twin brother, and spend a lot of time with him coming up. Who would you say? Does anyone else really inspire you, or has inspired you to come into this sport and make the path you have?
I think it would have to be kind of Michael Bisping. I still think he will go down as the UK guy. He was the first guy to get. I know there was Lee Ramidos and there was Ian Freeman before Mike Bisping. He wasn't the first English or UK guy to go to the UFC, but he was definitely the guy to make the most impact, and he put the UK on the map, MMA wise. So I'd have to say Michael Bisping. It's not someone who I've kind of fanboy over or anything like that, but he has done an awful lot and he's been very successful. And again, he was a Cage Warriors champion himself. So I think by default, it has to be Michael Bisping. He's made a massive difference in the UK. And then obviously you've got people like Conor McGregor who, have bring a lot of fans to the sport. Whatever anybody kind of thinks about Conor McGregor, he brings, the cash to MMA. He's the one who brings all the fans. And so you can't really do him down for that. So generally, I would say Michael Bisping. It was actually Michael Bisping that got me, into MMA in the first place. We saw him competing on the Ultimate Fighter series, and then we used to drive down to Widnes, where he was based at the time, and train where he trained at the Wolfslayer gym. So I guess it would have to be Michael Bisping.
That's wicked. Yeah, nice. Well, the godfather of UK MMA, you would say, So, Matt, I just want to say thank you, mate, for coming on the show and chatting with me today. It's been a real pleasure, mate, talking to you. And I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you, mate.
Next week. Of course, Matthias Frederick and Matt Bonner, it's on the marquee. So I wish you all the best of luck, mate, and I hope it all goes your way.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure. Thanks for watching. Maybe I'll come on after the fight. That'd be cool to catch up.
That'll be brilliant. Yeah, show us the belt.